Penguin Random House Audio presents Psyched Up, How the Science of Mental Preparation Can Help You Succeed, by Daniel McGinn. Read for you by Jonathan McClain. Introduction. Just after 8 a.m. on a summer morning, Mark McLaughlin is sprawled on a ratty armchair that he's shoved into a dark corner of a hospital locker room in central New Jersey. In a few moments, McLaughlin, who is a neurosurgeon, will make a 6-inch incision into the back of a 73-year-old patient whose arthritis has caused the lower part of his spinal nerve to crimp, threatening his ability to walk. The operation will take more than 3 hours. McLaughlin will be drilling, chipping, and cutting amid vital nerves just inches from the patient's aorta. McLaughlin needs to be focused. Clad in green surgical scrubs, McLaughlin lays his feet out on a low table and reclines. His eyes are closed. His iPhone sits on his chest, playing a Bach cantata at low volume. For a few minutes, he sits in silence. When the patient is anesthetized, the nurse calls his phone to signal him. Then McLaughlin, who is 51, wears glasses, has graying hair, and retains the broad, muscled back of a former college wrestler, gets up and walks briskly toward the operating room down the hall. Most surgeons work very differently than McLaughlin does. In the moments before an operation, they chat and joke with nurses and colleagues. They check email, do paperwork, and make phone calls. They are relaxed and nonchalant, treating surgery as just an ordinary part of their workday. McLaughlin doesn't banter. As he scrubs his hands at the sink, a lead-lined apron now over his scrubs to protect him from the X-rays used during surgery, his eyes are again closed. If a colleague tries to talk to him, McLaughlin replies a bit rudely, "Not now." He's engaged in his pre-surgical routine, which evolved from a practice he first learned to use in the wrestling room of a New Jersey prep school, an hour's drive from the hospital where he now operates. McLaughlin began wrestling in 6th grade, and although he immediately showed a talent for the sport, his physical skills only took him so far. Over time, he identified what was holding him back. "Physically, I was completely prepared," he says. "Mentally, I wasn't." So McLaughlin began working with a sports psychologist who helped him create a highly choreographed routine of mental preparation. Before matches, McLaughlin would visualize a greatest hits reel of his best wrestling moments, reinforcing his confidence. "The psychologist taught me to remember the sights and sounds of positive events, the feeling of the mat, what was around me, the colors," he recalls. "We focused the preliminary routine to try to get me into that autopilot mode and let my body fall into that groove." After he began using this pre-match routine, McLaughlin's experience on the mat changed. He no longer heard the crowd. His sense of time was altered. Though wrestling matches last 6 minutes, it felt as if they ended after 30 seconds. The worries, self-doubts, and negative thoughts decreased dramatically, and he began winning most of his matches. McLaughlin went on to wrestle at William & Mary, where he was team captain twice, won the Virginia State Championship, and was inducted into the college's Athletic Hall of Fame. Then he attended medical school, eventually specializing in neurosurgery. A few years later, as a surgical fellow, McLaughlin began to recognize similarities between the stresses of wrestling and the pressures of surgery. As a surgeon, he has to stay hyper-focused. If his attention wanders, something bad could happen very quickly. Just as it could, albeit with lower stakes, in wrestling. As a surgeon, he achieves a positive or negative result, and over time his reputation depends on his win-loss record, just as it had in wrestling. So, before every operation, he began utilizing the techniques that made such a difference in his wrestling career, by going through a systematic, ritualized process to put his mind in the optimal state. The routine began early this morning, when McLaughlin drank the first of the 3 cups of coffee he consumes before entering the operating room. If he's awakened late at night while on call to do emergency surgery, he may drink even more, especially if it looks like a long procedure. McLaughlin's longest operation lasted 18 hours. To stay attentive during long periods with limited sleep, some surgeons
Sample complete. Ready to continue?